Hello and welcome to a Fully Charged News Update. Now, there are literally hundreds of stories that I could cover in Fully Charged News. There's just literally, I would have to do this pretty much all day, every day. There's the UK government's withdrawal of subsidies for plug-in hybrid cars. That came as a bit of a shock. They're continuing with the subsidies for pure electric cars, but at a reduced rate, but they haven't scrapped them altogether. Big debate about that going on all over the place, whether it's good or bad. There's a lot of kind of slightly dodgy kind of tax break subsidies around plug-in hybrids. They're a kind of stopgap measure. We know we're going full electric. Let's move on. But there are some government decisions that very much fall within the remit of Fully Charged. One of the really big ones is fracking. I mean, imagine for a moment that you're looking at two engineers. Now, one of these engineers, highly qualified, very, very skilled, highly intelligent person, and he works for an oil and gas extraction company. And the other engineer, highly qualified, really well educated, very intelligent, and she works for a renewable energy company working on offshore wind energy. Now, in a social context, the first engineer tends to keep what he does for a living fairly quiet. I mean, fracking is a deeply, deeply unpopular topic in this country. The large majority of the country think it's ridiculous and stupid. The current government has ridden roughshod over the resistance, the local democracy that has voted against doing it, straight over that. Let's drill, let's frack, yeah, frack, baby, frack. The second engineer is very proud of her work and talks about it socially very easily and openly because offshore wind is incredibly popular with the general public. So which one would you rather be? And I ask this not because one is trendy and green and cool and the other one is old school and probably economically more sensible. No, that's not the reason. Now, I've just been reading some very well researched and very well written articles by a man called Jeremy Leggett, who I did meet very briefly last year, and he, unlike me, is extremely well educated and well informed. What is blindingly obvious is that fracking is a giant Ponzi scheme, even in the USA. In fact, specifically in the USA, where we've seen a massive increase in oil and gas fracking. All the companies involved, not just the rubbish ones, all of them are losing money. They are all operating on incredibly complex financial schemes, loads of junk debt, massive tax breaks, and mind-numbingly complex investment scams. Basically, these companies are funded by what has come to be known as the shale bubble. All these companies have run up a combined debt so far of $235 billion. This is what is happening in the American shale industry at the moment. 300,000 workers laid off. 70% of the equipment used for fracking standing idle. 70 fracking companies have already gone bankrupt. The only way they can survive is by borrowing more and more money, and the debt wall will, as many industry observers have commented, result in the complete and utter collapse of the industry. So just as the true nature of the absolutely disastrous last-ditch attempt at saving the fossil fuel industry in the USA is collapsing, we start to do it here. It doesn't make any economic sense. Forget about the poisoning the water table, the massive use of water that's involved in fracking, which is what's really causing a lot of the problems in America, especially in dry areas. The chemicals that they pump down into the earth that we are told again and again and again in this country are perfectly safe. Of course they are. Forget about the minor issue, and it's often overblown in the press, of small earthquakes in fracking areas. Forget all that. It doesn't make any economic sense. Now, we're told that it will replace the costly and maybe insecure energy imports that we have to make, mainly natural gas from Norway. But in order to replace the enormous amounts of gas we import from Norway, we would have to drill 15 new fracking wells every day for the next 30 years. And here's the really important point about all this. They do run out. In fact, they stop producing gas much faster than anyone in the industry predicted. And this is one of the biggest problems. Loads of investors who've jumped on the bandwagon and thrown an easy buck at this, invested as quickly as they can in fracking, have learnt to their cost that many of the estimates of how much gas is in the ground have been just slightly overestimated. It's called resource exaggeration. One company in California has recently revised the amount of gas it can extract from its many wells, and it's revised it down. by 96%. That's 96% less gas than they first estimated when they were having money thrown at them right, left and centre. Fracking is a temporary stopgap, last-ditch attempt at maintaining the fossil industry when the renewables industry is growing at exponential rate and, this is the really important thing, making money. So yes, I am vehemently and proudly, and I would argue sensibly, totally opposed to fracking. But moving on, let's forget all that. There's some really interesting news from Jaguar in the UK. They're suggesting that by 2025, all their cars, except for one model, will be 100% electric. No plug-in hybrids or intermediate fiddles, they're going 100% electric, baby. Now, this is obviously partly due to the incredible increase in confidence they've experienced since releasing the Jaguar I-Pace. It's been received with universal acclaim by both the press and individual customers who've got the car. Now, one or two cynics have pointed out that the I-Pace isn't really a British car because it's built in Austria. But then Jaguar isn't really a British company because it's owned by an Indian company, Tata. Oh, how the world turns. But there is good news for the UK because Jaguar have said that they're going to convert their works at Castle Bromwich to produce all these new electric cars. And the batteries are expected to come from the new Hyperbat factory in Coventry, which is being built in a collaboration between Williams Engineering and Unipart. So there's an update coming very soon about my really long trip I did in the I-Pace recently all over Europe, well, France, Belgium and the Netherlands, including using a 100 kilowatt Fastned rapid charger, CCS 100 kilowatts, really, really fast. As you've also seen, we've had a look at a lot of the new models that are coming out of a similar ilk to the Jaguar I-Pace, the Audi e-tron, the Mercedes EQC, all big-ish. Well, they're called compact SUVs. They're all about the same size. They've all got about the same range and the same power and the same battery size. The only difference is you can actually buy the Jaguar now, whereas the others you've got to wait till at least this time next year. So, I mean, for the time being, hats off to Jaguar for getting there first. Now, here's a question. Could hydrogen-powered trains replace conventional diesel ones? Now, there's always a lot of contentious comments when we do an episode about hydrogen fuel cell cars. Lots of arguments about whether it is the future or isn't. But there are some interesting applications appearing that use hydrogen, like this hydrogen-powered train in Germany. Two Coradia I-Lint trains built by the French company Alstom will start operating on a 100-kilometre, about 62-mile stretch of track running between the towns of Cuxhaven and Buxtehude. Now, here's a little anecdote that's got nothing to do with hydrogen or the future of energy. But when I was 13 years old, back in 1969, about the same time that men landed on the moon, I went to Germany with my best mate at school, who was German, and his family, and the very first town we ever stayed in was called Buxtehude. So I've been there, I know where it is. It's ever so nice. We picked strawberries fresh off the farm, dipped them in cream, ate them. And the cream is from the cows that lived in the house. They had cows in the house, kind of in a barn that was part of the house. Okay, it was wonderful. It was 1969. Anyway, this new hydrogen fuel cell train is replacing a load of diesel trains, which is a really, really good thing. And it's absolutely, this is really my argument, that there is a very important, vital role for hydrogen fuel cell technology. I'm just still not yet convinced it's in small passenger vehicles. But in big things like earth movers, diggers, trucks, buses, now trains, it makes an enormous amount of sense. Now, I'm hearing more and more stories coming out of Volkswagen, some of them in press releases, some of them anecdotal. They leak into my ears and I usually forget them, but I've remembered this one. Production of Volkswagen's ID range is starting at the company's Zwickau plant in Germany, and by 2020 they intend to have an annual production rate of 100,000 electric vehicles. Over the next few years, they want the entire plant to become 100% electric. Volkswagen's e-mobility board member Thomas Ulbrich confirmed this news last week. Now, I was going to read what he said out with a sort of cod German accent. Could have been slightly offensive. I checked just to make sure what Thomas Ulbrich sounds like. He's American, so I don't have to bother. I don't have to enter that political correctness bear pit. I'm not going to do a German accent. I might do it somewhere else, but I'm not doing it now. What Thomas said was, by mid-2020s, we will be converting the entire plant at Zwickau from 100% gas, petrol, today to 100% electric cars. Zwickau is, if you like, the tip of the iceberg. Our mission is nothing less than the transformation of the group-wide production network towards e-mobility. We speak about 16 locations worldwide, and that's within just 3 years. Volkswagen are definitely going the whole hog. But in contrast to these really exciting, sort of forward-thinking projections of what Volkswagen are going to do in the next 2 or 3 years, Tesla Model 3 sales have literally gone through the roof. I mean, it's one of the most common stories going around at the moment that there is enormous demand for electric cars and there isn't the supply for them. And that all the manufacturers, other than Tesla, are bringing out lots and lots of new, really good, really exciting, more and more affordable electric models that go further, that have a greater range, that have bigger batteries, that charge faster. But you can't quite get them yet. You've got to wait. Even if they're out now, officially, you've still got a long waiting list for everything other than possibly the Renault Zoe, which is doing really good business, as you'll discover in an episode soon where we talk about Renault in particular. And that's the one model at the moment, other than Tesla, where there isn't a waiting list. Obviously, I'm talking about in the UK and in Europe at the moment, we can't get the Tesla Model 3, but clearly it is coming. If you live in the USA at the moment, you don't have to wait so long for your Tesla Model 3. Obviously, Tesla have around 400,000 pre-orders for the Tesla Model 3, and I thought we'd have to wait years and years for them to fulfill that to start with. Well, the production rate has ramped up so much, they've already delivered 100,000 cars. 100,000 already. This is a really new company. It's only been going for a few years, and they've produced 100,000 cars in the second half of this year. Not the whole year. Earlier this year, they were making a few hundred a week. Now they're over 5,000 cars a week. And it's important to remember all these cars are pre-sold. They're not just making them on the hope that someone's going to buy them. They've all got customers waiting for them. And these sales have devastated the car market in the United States of similar brands of fossil fuel cars. They're already outselling BMW and Mercedes in the United States for similar sized cars, and they're about to overtake Audi. And these are in America, these companies are really big. They're really popular cars in America. They have been until now. Now everyone wants a Tesla Model 3. What's more, the Tesla Model 3 is now the fastest selling electric car in history. So how can Tesla produce 5,000 cars a week while other manufacturers are struggling to manufacture a few hundred and blaming it all on the shortage of batteries? Could it be two big reasons? One, Tesla make their own batteries at their Gigafactory. We know all about that. I'm not going to go on about that. And two, they don't have this kind of massive legacy behind them of once having manufactured billions of fossil fuel engines, huge factories that churn out diesel and petrol engines. Tesla don't need to shift all their diesel models first to make way for the electric ones. They don't have any diesel ones to sell. All the other manufacturers are really in a pickle because they have this enormous industry, very profitable, been going for over 100 years now, that produce fossil fuel engines very cheaply, and they know they've got to go to electric, but it's really difficult. It is really difficult. I actually really feel sorry for them. It is not an easy thing to sort out. Whatever, Tesla are currently riding high, and as you've seen in the previous episodes of Fully Charged, it is a very spectacular car. Tens of thousands of new owners love the car. They're obsessing about them, they're tweeting about them, they're making YouTube videos about them, they're just going on and on and on. I tell you what, it must be really annoying if you work in the automotive industry outside of Tesla. You must be sick to the back teeth of hearing about it. So I won't go on about it anymore. I'm sorry. And finally, plastic boats. I really love this story. It's come out of the Reuters news agency. It's just a little snippet, but I thought it was worth mentioning. I'll tell you what though, don't ask for a plastic bag if you go shopping in Kenya. Whew, blimey. Last year, the Kenyan authorities introduced the toughest laws on single-use plastic bags. I mean, you really don't want to go there. The manufacturers, the distributors, the shops, even individual Kenyans are subject to up to 4 years in prison, or, what is it, $40,000 fine if you're found chucking away a plastic bag. But the reason behind this is because it's choking their seas. There's plastic on the beaches. It's just absolutely dreadful. So this amazing company and this one individual has created this boat out of waste plastic, repurposed into a boat. And it's called the Flippy Floppy. And that's because they've covered the outside in flip-flops, which is what we call, you know, those sandals where the thing goes between your toe. I don't really like wearing them. In Australia, they're called thongs. And I call them thongs now because I got used to it because I'm married to an Australian and spent time there. We don't call them thongs. Thongs is a different thing in this country. So anyway, flip-flops, you know what I mean. But they cut them up, and that's why the boat is so colourful. I just think it's a beautiful little story. Anyway, that's all I've got time for. I'm going to try and do more news stuff soon. We're going to do an episode very soon with Johnny Smith and I. We're going to do more recordings of Fully Charged News episodes, possibly a little shorter than the one we put out before, which we'll record in front of live audiences. Before we go, I just want to thank a few really amazing Patreon supporters who support Fully Charged for $10 a month or more, which is incredible. We're extremely grateful. It is still vitally important for our survival. These are going to stress me a little bit saying some of these names. Tadji Mulkern, Paul TC, Adam Humphrey, Joe, Matt Howard, Rob Atkinson, Mni Winconi, Philip Chadwick, James Jacobs, and Sean Asman. Thank you so much for your support. Absolutely vitally important. One more thing before we go. I've just remembered. It's a plug. It's a cheap plug. Don't buy it, but you can. I'm going to put a link underneath here. This is my new book. It comes out on November the 1st. It's a kind of comic memoir of various aspects of my life. It's very silly. It's not very silly. Some of it's very moving and important and emotionally something or other. It's called The Recollections, Obsessions and Joys of Blokedom. It's about being a bloke. The title my son created. He just refers to me as some old bloke, like someone he met. Charming. 25 years of parenting. There we go. And that comes out on the 1st. There's a link below if you want to buy it. I don't. It's already sold loads of books. It's fine. There's some, as you can see, the shelves have been slightly restructured to promote the book. But I'm very pleased with it. I hope that people who read it will like it. That nobody gets it until I think the 1st of November is when it goes out. So that's all. Please do subscribe to Fully Charged. Please do press the little bell thing, because that's really good. That works much better than I thought. I've used it quite a lot. And also have a look at the Patreon link if you feel the urge. No pressure. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching.